Hey everybody, welcome back to the Impossible Podcast. Today I'm speaking with Rob Jones, who's a former Marine who on his second deployment got hit by an ID, had a double amputation, and has come back to since bike across America, win a bronze medal at the Paralympics, and run 31 marathons in 31 days. He's an inspiring guy. He's an incredible athlete, and you're going to get a lot out of this one. He has some really insightful things to talk about mission, about pushing through when times get hard, and how to do some of these impossible challenges that he faced up to, went after, and got done. It's going to be a good one. Before we get started, I want to remind you guys that we're sitting about a 4.8 out of 5 stars on iTunes. And we're also featured on their homepage. So if you haven't already, now is a great time to head on over to iTunes, leave a review if you're enjoying the show, and remind people to push their limits and do something impossible. Also, while we're on the subject, we have a 30-day cold shower therapy challenge. If you're interested in learning to get comfortable while being uncomfortable, a 30-day cold shower therapy challenge is the way to do it. It starts on Monday the 8th, and we'll be doing it 30 days in the dead of winter. It's pretty cold in every part of the country, so there will be no excuses. And if you're interested in changing your mindset, learning to actually get comfortable while being uncomfortable, check out the Cold Shower Therapy Challenge. There's apps on iTunes and Google Play, and you can find out more by subscribing to impossiblehq.com. If you haven't picked up your Impossible gear yet, go on over to impossiblegear.com, pick up your Impossible shirt, your Impossible hoodie, and after this interview, when you're inspired to go push your limits and do something impossible, throw your hoodie on, throw your t-shirt on, and go push your limits. All right, that's it for right now. Let's get into my interview with Rob Jones. All right, and we're live. Today I've got Rob Jones, a man of many talents. Rob, thank you for being here today.
Thanks for the opportunity, man. It's good to see you. You were with me in San Diego.
Yeah, so you've done quite a few things. You've deployed to the Marines. You faced down an IED. You've got a bronze medal in the Paralympics. You've rode your bike across America, and you've done 31 marathons in 31 days, which is where I recently came across you. That's a lot of things to go through. I don't know exactly where to start. But yeah, I ran across your stuff when I was hearing about the month of marathons, and you came through San Diego, and I was like, oh, this guy's, I just got done running a bunch of stuff. I want to go see this guy doing this. And I showed up, I think, just as you finished, and you were about to bounce to the next state and just doing 31 of those back to back. But that was really impressive. And I was like, I have to get on the phone with this guy and talk to him about what he's up to.
Yeah, thanks, man. I appreciate you coming out and showing me some support in San Diego. I had a big group that day.
Well, you had big groups all over the place. That was the crazy thing, was you had it was what, 30 in the States, and then you had one in England. Was that right?
Well, technically one in England, one in Canada, and 29 in America.
And you had people at almost every race running with you.
No, I had people at every single one. Most of the crowds were at least, over the course of the day, at least 50 usually would come out. But there were a few, sometimes people have to work or whatever.
Yeah. They can't all just be running all day.
Yeah.
But I want to get into your story a little bit and kind of dig into, how you got started with all this, and then also talk about the different challenges that you faced personally, both after deploying, after facing on the ID, and then getting right back into athletics and finding that as kind of an outlet for what you've done. And so do you mind, I did a little bit of an intro already, but I'd love for you to kind of share your story of how you got started in the Marines, and then kind of we can go from there.
Yeah, I was a junior at Virginia Tech, just at a point in my life where things weren't really working out how I envisioned. I was a computer science major, and I determined that I wasn't really cut out for computer science. And so I was looking for something that was missing in my life, and I read a book about the Marine Corps called Brotherhood of Heroes. And yeah, it struck a chord, and so I decided to join. I went to the recruiter the next day, and I was probably signed up within the week, I think.
So right away.
Yeah, pretty much right away. Did it right after I read that book.
That's a that's a good book. Then they gotta get that out there. So you, I have from your bio that you graduated school in 2007. I think it was high school, right? And then 2008 you deployed.
I graduated college in 2007.
Okay.
I joined the reserve, so I was able to finish my last year at college before I deployed.
Okay. And so then you deployed a couple times. Is that right?
Yeah, my first one was to Iraq in 2008, Habaniya, Iraq. Mostly did it was 7 months, mostly doing cache sweeping, just use a metal detector to try and find buried munitions. And then my second deployment was 2010 to Afghanistan, and we were trying to find IEDs over there with metal detectors instead of the buried munitions.
Gotcha. And what drew you to the Marines specifically? Was it just the book, or was there something else about the actual just the way everything is run in the Marines versus school and a traditional route of 9 to 5?
It wasn't the book itself; it was the people that were in the book and the characteristics that were uh, on display in the book. So, courage, brotherhood, altruism, selflessness, all those kinds of things were displayed at the Battle of Peleliu, which is the battle that the book was about, by the Marines. And that was what I needed at the time. It struck a chord, and so was those characteristics that drew me to the Marine Corps, and primarily the brotherhood from it.
It's interesting. One of the things we talk about is like pushing yourself to live a better story and doing the things that you don't think you can do. Was there any part of joining the Marines where you're like, this is gonna be like really, really tough? Was it? I've talked to kind of two sets of people who've joined the military. One was like, okay, it was really tough, and it kind of shaped and molded them over time into becoming that type of person they wanted to be. And the other type is sort of the Jocko type that was born, born and 2 years old. They want to just jump and play commando, and just it comes really easy. Which one of those did you fall into, do you think?
I was molded, I think, but I was molded by boot camp and everything. But I obviously had to have that drive to begin with. And the reason I joined the Marine Corps, well, part of the reason I joined the Marine Corps was because it was going to be tough. So, I was looking for that kind of a thing. And then because I was open to it, I think they were more successful at molding me into a Marine than if I, wasn't all that interested.
Yeah. There's something about those hard things that shape and mold and transform people, and it's interesting to see. It seems like I've had a bunch of different military guys on the podcast recently. I had Akshay Nanavati, I think, who featured you in his book or his trailer about his book on a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
And it seems there's something about specifically military that it's this really. I mean, it's sports played to 100, playing to like it's all the characteristics that you learn through athletics, but in real life with life or death consequences, and they really force you to build the characteristics that a lot of times I think everybody wants to have or they'd wish they had, but they're not willing to go through some of the the hellish challenges and circumstances that forge those characteristics. And the things that are interesting about those characters in the book don't come from living a normal life. You have to get out into the battlefield to experience those and to have those kind of molded into you.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to chisel a statue, you got to hit it with a chisel and pound the rock with it. So it's not an easy. It takes a lot of force and it takes a lot of adversity in order to become a lot stronger. But I would say the people that say they want to do it but aren't willing to go through what it takes to get it, they don't truly want it. So I think they really need to reevaluate what they actually want in life.
And that I 100% agree on that. And it's kind of harsh sometimes. People don't really nobody likes to take that message. But when you lay it out like that, you're like, this is the price of it. This is what you have to go, pay up in order to go forge those characteristics or to become that type of person. Either put up or shut up. A lot of people will walk away. And that's a message that I don't think a lot of people are, they don't necessarily get. And a lot of people need to hear it. And I think there's a segment of people that are starving for hard challenges that are worthwhile and pay off for something awesome.
Well, I'm not criticizing the person that doesn't want it, to each their own. But to say, I wish I could play a harmonica and then never actually buy a harmonica or even take a lesson. Do you really wish that you could play a harmonica, or do you just wish, what do you actually wish for?
Yep.
So, and I'm not criticizing you for wanting what you want or not wanting what you don't want, but, just be honest with yourself.
Yeah, and getting clarity on what that is and what you are willing to go after. Yeah. So something happened on the second deployment and it kind of, life-changing. Can you kind of share with us what happened?
Yeah, like I said, my job was to find IEDs in Afghanistan, and the way it would work would be we'd patrol up to a place where there was a high likelihood of having an IED, namely a bridge or something like that, some kind of terrain feature that required us to go across a narrow area. So there'd be a high likelihood there could be an IED in there. So what we would do is I would cross first with my metal detector and make sure it was clear, and then everybody else would follow my path that I laid out. And on July 22nd, 2010, I was in the process of going through that and making sure there was a clear route through this danger area. And I missed the IED, and it hit me before I found it. And that resulted in double above knee amputations.
So what's that like after spending 2 years in the Marines, and you said you were in the reserves before that? You've kind of got you're working towards this brotherhood that you're a part of, and then this goes. What was it like the couple days after? I mean, I don't even know if you remember parts of that, but what was it like in the immediate aftermath of that?
I was unconscious for maybe 20 seconds, and I remember the rest of the day, or not the day, but then until they put me in the tank to take me to the Kazivac helicopter. And then after that, I was unconscious for about 5 days. And then I spent a week in the intensive care unit, kind of high on morphine, going in for surgery. So, the first 12 days, I don't really have a whole lot of vivid memories. But then when my senses did start to come back, I realized that my life's mission remained unchanged, even though I was a double amputee. I still wanted to have a life that I could be proud of, a life that made a difference, and one that I could enjoy. And I still wanted to spend time with my friends and my family. And so all that really changed was how I was going to do that now. So, I was doing it with the Marine Corps before, and I just needed to figure out what my new path was going to be to contributing to society. So the first step of that was to, learn how to walk again and heal up.
Yeah. So how do you even start that process? What does that even look like as far as the one thing as I've gone through, some of your videos and the interviews you've done in the past is it seemed like you got back on the horse pretty quickly. Like you just, you didn't spend a lot of time feeling sorry for yourself. And that sounds almost crazy, but it seemed like you just applied yourself to the task at hand. But even something as simple as walking again, what's that training process look like?
Yeah, I have a knack for just kind of accepting the situation and doing what I think needs to be done. And, you only have a certain amount of energy you can expend during the course of a day. So if you spend 10% of that energy on feeling sorry for yourself or wishing something that happened, didn't happen, then you're only going to have 90% of your energy to put towards something that you actually can have an effect on. And so, it kind of makes sense just to skip all that stuff and that energy on what you need to do. And so, the first month was literally just waiting for my body to heal, and just not a whole lot I could do besides eat and, just get enough rest. And, there was a little bit of physical therapy, just kind of getting used to moving my legs around or my residual limbs around, learning how to get into the wheelchair, just moving around a little bit. But it wasn't, a whole lot of technical stuff that I had to learn. It was taxing. I could barely lift my stumps at first.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it was pretty much just waiting for my body to heal is really what the first month was all about.
Okay, and then what were the following months after that like?
Yeah, after that is where the tricky stuff or the skill learning happened, and so I spent the next year, about a year and a half, learning how to use the prosthetic. So they give you the leg sockets, and you start as a double above knee amputee. You start short on little midget legs, and you basically just get used to how the sockets feel and how your body moves around again, and
Mm-hmm.
get your center of gravity, figure out your balance and how to move with prosthetics. And then as you get better, you get a little taller and taller, and then eventually they'll give you the bionic knee, which is the most advanced recreation of the human knee that is available, and it has all sorts of weight distribution sensors and algorithms that recreate the way that the human knee works. And so it's quite sophisticated, but at the same time there's a lot more chance to fall down, and it takes a little bit more skill to learn. And so then you work on learning that, and when I got good with that, I started to move on to other stuff like learning how to ride a bike, learning how to run again. I got into rowing, and then just going up and down stairs, kind of learning the advanced stuff.
Yeah. What's the toughest part about relearning all that? Is there a specific area that's you found to be the most challenging?
I think if I could go back and do anything else, I would have gotten rid of my wheelchair a little bit earlier. I think what happens is you kind of become dependent and comfortable in the wheelchair, or with whatever stage you're in, and to go to that next stage takes a little bit of a push, because it can be embarrassing to it's embarrassing for anybody to learn something new and not be good at it, and so you kind of look stupid when you fall down and when you're not good at it. And so if I could go back, I would have gotten rid of my wheelchair sooner, um, and I think I would have progressed a lot faster because I was relying on the wheelchair, and what I needed to do was force myself to rise to the occasion and just get rid of that wheelchair. And then just like I said, each stage you tend to feel a little bit embarrassed because you're a new guy again. You're like starting over, and you fall down, and everybody, forks drop, and everybody looks at you for a second, and then you get back up, and so it's a little bit embarrassing. But everybody goes through that over the course of their recovery.
Yeah. Do you end up getting good at like doing the recoveries out of the falls, or is it just like when you're skiing, the first thing you have to do is learn to fall well? Was that kind of a thing that you kind of picked up on after a while? You kind of just, okay, I rolled with it, and then pretty soon you're you're running and biking and rowing all over the
Yeah,
place.
yeah, that's one of the first things you do learn actually, because if there's any guarantee, it's that you're gonna fall down at some point. So we did spend a good amount of time on techniques for standing up after a fall, with the knees, with the short legs and everything, and you get good at that pretty early on, so that when you do the advanced stuff, you don't have, or if you're out and about, and you fall down in public or something, you can get back up without anybody
I
to help you.
Yeah, I like how the two things that you mentioned about that were, one, you would take away like the dependency, like earlier on, like anytime you're learning a new skill, like take away the dependency that might feel comfortable, but it also might be holding you back, and then two, also be prepared to fall all the time, just in case, and figure out how to put yourself back up, because those two things are going to happen regardless. So,
Yeah. Well, yeah, you have to get rid of the safety net eventually. Otherwise, you're not really going to achieve what your maximum potential if you're always there with the safety net. Yeah, and so you got to get rid of it.
cool. So that's middle of 2010 was the IED. 2011, you're honorably discharged, and then you immediately decide to jump into rowing.
Yeah. I started. I wouldn't say full time training for rowing, but I was training maybe 5 times a week. I convinced the therapist in the clinic to let me bring a rowing machine, a Concept 2, into the clinic, because they didn't have one, and I needed to start practicing my rowing because I wanted to try and make the Paralympics. And then near the end of my recovery, I met my rowing partner, and we decided together. We sat down and said, "Well, do you want to try and make the Paralympics or not?" And she said yes, and I said yes. So when I actually, before I was officially retired, I went on terminal leave, and then I drove down to Florida and started training right away, twice a day, 6 days a week.
So, what was it about rowing specifically that you jumped into so quickly with it? Did you have any previous experience, or was it just something that you're like, okay, I'm going to do what I can with what I've got?
Yeah, well, yeah, pretty much that. I didn't have any on the water experience. The only experience I had was, I remembered before, when I was able-bodied, that workouts on the rowing machine were always really tough, and it just so happened that rowing was in the Paralympics, and it also just so happened that there was a place where I could learn how to row near the hospital, and then it also happened that there was a partner for me that was a female and was skilled and in good shape. So all these things kind of fell together. If I looked at rowing and there wasn't a place for me to learn how to row near in DC, then I probably wouldn't have done it, because I wouldn't have, I had to be in the hospital, and
Mm-hmm.
so I might have tried something else, or I don't know what would have happened. But yeah, so a lot of things had to fall into place just in the right spot.
Have you you're familiar with the Jim Jones guys?
Yeah, yeah,
Have you?
so Rob McDonald, the former training director over there, he wrote my strength and conditioning program for my 2012 training.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Yeah,
That's kind of
yeah.
cool. I was going to ask you if you've done their tailpipe workout.
I haven't done it as a disabled person. I did it as an able-bodied, though, on my own.
Okay, that thing sucks.
Yeah, it's tough. Yeah, I mean, anything. I mean, the rowing machine's tough, but it's only as tough as you make it. So that can be tough, or just sprinting can be tough. Walking can be tough, as long as you do it right.
Yeah. So you get discharged from the Marines, then you drive down to Florida, and you're just going full tilt towards this Paralympics goal. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, full dedication to it. That's what it requires if you want to be if you want to have a chance at winning gold on the world stage. You have to fully dedicate yourself. So I knew I needed to go to a place where I could train every day on the water, and so couldn't really do that in DC reliably. And so we went down to somewhere where it was going to be warm and we'd be able to get out on the water just about every day. So, you have to, if you want it, then you make it and you manifest it. So, I wasn't in the right place for me to be able to train like I needed to be able to train. So I moved.
It was just that important, huh?
Exactly. Yeah. I lived in a hotel for 5 months down there in Florida and then moved up to Charlottesville, actually, Charlottesville, Virginia after that. And then spent the rest of the time between May and September training up there.
I think that's something that some people don't always grasp is um, actually moving your physical person to a lot of times people will talk about, hey, I'm not able to do that because I'm not close to XYZ, or I can't, pursue whatever I want to go after because it's not, there's nothing conveniently located to me.
Yeah.
And I like how you're just like, yeah, I'm moving to Florida, like for 5 months living in a hotel. Cause this is the thing that I'm going to prioritize, the rest of my life around and go after it in a way that, you're aiming to succeed and not have a built-in excuse to fall short.
Well, it just boils down to that whole thing we were talking about earlier about whether or not you actually want it. So if you really truly want something, like I wanted to be in the Paralympics and win in the Paralympics, then you're going to do whatever you need to. So if you don't really want something, then you're going to let something like not being in the right location stop you. So it all just boils down to what's most important, where you live or what you want to accomplish.
What was the training regimen like? You said Bobby wrote that out for you, and then how did that all play out?
So he wrote the strength and conditioning. So we were in the gym 3 times a week, and we decided. I went out to Jim Jones and talked to him maybe a week before I went down to Florida, and he just did an assessment. Met him and became friends, and did an assessment on what movements can I do, what's going to be beneficial for the trunk and arms rowing, and what I needed. We only had 9 months, so we had to kind of focus on a couple things. And what we decided to do was, um, he decided that I could use a little bit of mass on my body. So most of the workouts that I did were about mass gain in the gym. So a lot of 10 by 10 pull up and bench press back and forth, and then a lot of tons of, I mean, really tons of pull ups, lots of pushing and pulling, and then lots of deadlifts, but mostly just stuff that was designed to add some muscle onto my body. And then the other stuff, the cardiovascular and the power endurance, that came from training on the water. And then obviously we had to spend a lot of time learning the skill of rowing.
And so you said you had 9 months to train for it.
Yeah, so I mean, we got down to Florida essentially January of 2012, and the Paralympics were September 2nd, 2012. So I mean, I guess 8 months really. But I had been training for it before then, just not full time. So I probably started, doing one workout a day, probably in September of 2011. But I wouldn't call that full time training. I would call that just training.
Okay.
Preparatory training, I guess. But yes, I wouldn't call that full training.
And then you go out and do it. You go get the bronze medal. And how were you happy with that? What were you aiming for as far as it seems like you're aiming for gold. You don't really do the playing to participation ribbon doesn't seem to be your thing.
Yeah, we wanted to win. That was the whole purpose is to win the race. Obviously we didn't. We got third, and I was I was sad. I was proud of it, because you take where we came from, 9 months or 8 months, 9 or 8 months of training, and being a new double, new pair of people, learning how each other works and stuff, and based on the fact that I was pretty much a skeleton of myself 2 years earlier, So it's proud, and we worked as hard as we possibly could. I can't imagine doing anything differently that year that could have got us any faster. Um, I was proud of us, proud of our coaches, proud of the support network that we had. But just not satisfied because we didn't win, and we set out to win. And this is how it is. But I'm not going to sit there and beat myself up over it, or I'm not going to have the 1,000-yard stare over a beer. Reliving that race for the rest of my life. So I just I have to live with the fact that I wasn't totally satisfied. But proud of our achievement.
So the next year, I literally going through your bio on your website, and it's like every single year since like 2010 or 2011, you've got like a new adventure or race you did. And so in 2013, 2014, you said you rode your bike across the U.S. What made you want to do? What was there any part of you that said, okay, bronze is pretty good for training for 9 months. If I sat down and reloaded for a full year, I could make another run at gold? Was that a consideration, or were you just like, okay, I did that, that's in the rearview mirror, I want to do something new?
Yeah, we did. We did try and we did World Championships 2013. But that season didn't go quite as well as the 2012 season. My partner spent a long time. She switched over to skiing for the winter, and so that doesn't totally translate. It translates a little bit to rowing, but it doesn't fully translate. And so we didn't actually get back in the boat until maybe March of 2013. And so
Okay.
I had been training for rowing. She had been training for skiing. So, that season just didn't quite go as well as the one before. And, I have to take my own personal responsibility for that as well. I should have insisted that she keep rowing. But I didn't do that. So that's on me. That's extreme ownership. You know what I mean?
There you go. Jocko, shout out.
Yeah. So yeah, we did that, and we still placed fourth. But,
okay.
I really thought at the end of that season that based on where we had finished the year before, we probably should have won that race and maybe even been close to breaking the world record or something. So, but you know what? Yes, again, doesn't always work out like you want it to. But you got to be proud of what you did.
There you go. So right after that, then you decided, okay, I'm over this boat. It just seems like you're moving through the different various forms of transportation over time. So you move from your boat, and then you say, hey, I'm going to ride my bike across America.
Yeah. So
did you have to relearn how to ride a bike? Had you relearned that specific skill at this point, or were you just like, I'm going to go for it and figure it out as we go?
Yeah. So I had relearned how to ride the bike when I was at Walter Reed. It kind of just started because I had heard that nobody had ever done it as a double above knee amputee that came through Walter Reed. So I figured I might as well try and be the first. Okay. And then see if, try and show people that it was possible. And that's what the bike ride was all about, was putting that to use and trying to show, what was possible for wounded veterans so that they could see it, whether the injury is psychological or physical. I'm out there and I had a traumatic experience, and I was able to, relearn how to ride a bike and figure out my way that I was going to continue to contribute to my country and to my fellow veterans. And so, that was just the way that I decided to get that message across. And I figured I'd ride my bike across the country in the winter, diagonally across, and just make it as hard as I could, and just kind of blow people's minds with how difficult it was, and just add that insurmountable evidence to what I was proving.
Yeah, so most people, when they do a bike ride, they do it over May, June, July, or April, or summer months. You go from, I think, what is it, October basically through the winter?
Yeah, October to April. So through the winter and a little bit of that spring and fall time. But I wanted to do it. I didn't want to do it in the summer because the heat really affects me badly. So I figured I wanted to do it in the winter time. And It wasn't too bad for them. There was the year of the polar vortex, so that was and but we did luck out as far as getting caught in places and with snow and everything and ice. So we only got caught a couple times for a few days, so it kind of worked out pretty well. But it was very, very cold.
Did you have a time schedule for what you wanted to do it in, or are you just saying, "Hey, we're gonna because biking roads in the winter is way different, especially if you're starting up in Maine and coming down through. That's a whole different type of challenge than riding perfectly paved and clean roads in the middle of the summer."
Yeah, I kind of calculated that I was going to take about 6 months to do it beforehand, and so I kind of had that in my mind, and it ended up being 181 days. So pretty much exactly what I predicted.
And you had a sport vehicle the whole time?
Yeah, my little brother drove a U-Haul that we had kind of retrofitted with cots in the back of it. Yeah, and he just followed me along and kind of protected me from vehicles that were coming up behind me, and it's a support truck. Luckily, we didn't have to sleep in it too much because there were a lot of generous hotels that would put us up for the night. So we didn't sleep in it all that much, maybe 3 weeks total.
Do you have a part of the ride that stuck out to you as the most difficult or the most challenging throughout the whole thing?
Yeah, it's hard to say. Any kind of mountain pass or any kind of mountain range that I had to cross. So I had to cross the Appalachian Mountains, Cumberland Mountains, Ozark Mountains, Rocky Mountains. So all that stuff would have been the toughest part. Yeah. So
I just ask because sometimes I'll talk to guests, and I know for me, it's sometimes when I do one of these races or whatever, there's not in every race, but in a decent number of them, there's like a specific point where it feels like the race is challenging you, or the event or whatever it is like personally challenging you and like daring you to back down, like as you're going up a mountain and all of a sudden a gust comes around and you're like, I could see how it could be very easy to give up right now. And then you have to double down and remember why you're doing it and then keep going forward.
Exactly. I mean, I couldn't say any better myself, man.
That's cool. So you finished that bike ride, and before we keep going, because you've got a couple other things that you've done, and what's the main drive? Why put so much effort into all the athletics? Where's the drive coming from?
Well, I guess the reason I picked sports was because that's just what I had a talent for, and I had an interest in it. Like I said, I was into Jim Jones, and but when I was in the Marine Corps, and just from being in the Marine Corps, I learned that physical effort is a great way to grow as a person and kind of learn about yourself. And so I kind of took to that, and that was my skill set. And so it's what that saying is, do what you can with what you have where you are. And so I had these skills of just being able to endure crappy situations, and so I applied that to trying to prove that wounded veterans aren't broken veterans and that they can still contribute to society. And I did that by raising money for charities and spreading the word about veterans. And so that's how I chose to do it. There's plenty of different ways that you could do that, but that was my skill set. So I used the almost impossible task of riding across the country as a double above knee amputee on a regular bike to do it, and then the marathon challenge as well.
Yeah, it was. I like the way you said the ability to endure, and you listed that as like a talent, because that's actually a talent. And a lot of times I'll tell people I'm not really the fastest person in the world. I'm not the most skilled runner or anything like that, but I can suffer pretty well. Yeah. And the ability to like get beaten down by a race or get beaten down by like a certain situation and then take it and then keep going is something you can learn, and something that is I think really undervalued as far as a a skill set that you can actually build, and a type of resilience that over time you can improve and really add to any other skill that you have.
Yeah, it kind of is a skill, I guess, but at the same time, it goes back to what we were talking about earlier, where I cared so much about getting the word out about veterans and raising the money that I was able to endure whatever I had to. So I guess it's more about mission accomplishment than anything else for me. And then so because of the importance of the mission, the endurance kind of goes hand in hand with that. But you definitely get good at being able to endure anything through being in the Marine Corps and having that sense of mission accomplishment.
Yeah. So with that mission, you just did 31 marathons in 31 days, and that was all for this mission. And this overall mission, we've kind of talked about it in glancing, but we haven't talked about it specifically. Do you want to share what your overall mission with all these different projects that you're doing is?
Yeah, it's just what I said before about, proving that wounded veterans aren't broken. And I don't care if the injury is mental or physical. You're still able to continue fighting. You still have that responsibility to keep fighting. So just got to remember that you're still a warrior, and other veterans are depending on you. America is still depending on you. So you have to fight on. So, that's just what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to show that to veterans that may be struggling, and I'm trying to show it to civilians that may not know exactly what it's like to be a wounded veteran. And so, so they have a better understanding of both sides of the coin in terms of, veterans that come home.
Yeah. The one of the things that you've said before is that you're trying to raise $1 million for the various veterans charities. So when they do come home, they have they have ways to get plugged in, ways to still feel to see areas where they can contribute and participate and live a life they're proud of.
Yeah, exactly. And that's, veteran charities play a big role in that. They provide opportunities, they provide counseling, they provide training and therapy. So, part of that does come from, part of that, all that does help people to find their new path. Is having all these different opportunities to explore different options, and so that's what these people do, and they help people when they may be in a precarious position financially or what have you, and so it's important that they keep going. For veterans, it's important that they're still around for as long as we can manage.
Yeah. What do you think about your situation, or what do you think you did differently, or maybe your mindset, or whatever it might be? You mentioned a lot of veterans do come back, and they have this. They're trying to figure out how to fit back in. They're trying to get back onto, a normal life away from war. How do you think? What did you do differently to be able to kind of bounce back, from a pretty major injury, and get back to doing, all the stuff you're doing before, and then, way more? What was the difference, do you think?
I really couldn't tell you. Somehow I just have that knack for accepting my situation, and I think it's mostly just a combination of, what you're probably born with a certain amount of resiliency and ability to do that, and that combined with the life experiences that you face, that develop your habits and your reactions to things. And so it just so happened that those two things combined for me led to what I'm doing, and I can't really say that I did anything. I didn't have a different method. I didn't have a different approach than anybody else, I don't think. It's just a matter of, I was in a position where I could, I had these things ingrained in me, and I could see different opportunities for myself. that other people might find it a little bit trickier to discover. And so, I was able to find those things quickly, probably as a matter of luck and partly, who I am and what, based on my experiences.
Do you think like throwing yourself into the rowing thing, like as soon as you physically could, was a piece of kind of reclaiming that story of, hey, I can I can still compete at a pretty high level and still go do these things, rather than if you just sat around doing like physical therapy, but watching TV and like, man, I wish I could do something else, but kind of not waiting on anything and just jumping right into the next thing right away.
Yeah, I think it's definitely important to set goals for yourself pretty quickly. Give yourself something to work towards. Because if you're not working towards something, then you're just kind of sitting there stagnating. And I don't care what the thing that you're working towards is. For me, it was just it was rowing and Paralympics. And somebody could be learning how to play guitar or whatever. But as long as you have to set some kind of goal for yourself in order to prevent stagnation. And so, I did that. Not really. I'm articulating this after the fact. I did it. And it's also important to see what you're made of. Challenge yourself and force yourself to rise to the occasion and find out what you're made of. Because when you get injured so catastrophically, it's you're not exactly sure what you can do. And so the only way to find out what you can do is to test yourself. And so, once you test yourself and you know exactly where you are, then you can figure out what you need to do in order to get where you want to go.
No, I like that. So after going back to like all your different goals that you've got, so you finish this bike ride in 2014, and then you decide, hey, like, okay, I did rowing, got rowing down, I got biking, okay, I got biking down. I'm gonna do triathlons next, and you spend the next couple of years going after and training triathlons pretty hard.
Yeah, I was trying to make the Paralympics for 2016 in triathlon. Sadly, spoiler alert, I didn't make it. And, I think I probably overestimated, how overestimated how much ground I could make up just through, working as hard as I could. I figured I could outwork everybody and catch up. But I was pretty disadvantaged in the triathlon in the category that I was in. I had to race against single above knee amputees, and I could never catch them on the bike enough. They would always just blow me out of the water on the bike, and I would start to reel them in on the run. I was the fastest runner, but I could never make up enough time on the run in order to be competitive. So I never was able to make it to the Paralympics in triathlon. But I'm glad I went for it because I learned that I had a talent for running, and I put that talent to use for my next, for the marathon challenge. And I think doing the marathon challenge was probably had a better effect or a bigger impact than me going to the Paralympics ever could have.
Yeah, let's talk about that, because that's how I got into marathons too. I tricked myself into liking running with triathlons.
Yeah.
I realized I was like, I don't think I want to run marathons, and so I was like, oh, I can swim a little, I can run a little, I can bike a little. Okay, that's fine. And then I got into longer races.
Yeah.
But so when you're doing triathlon, you found out you're pretty good at the run. When did this 31 marathons, 31 days? Start to kind of formulate in your head as something that you wanted to do?
I ran the Marine Corps Marathon in 2015 kind of on a, I don't want to say, well, I guess on a whim. I had only been training, for 5K. That was the distance that I had to run for the triathlon. So I'd only ran 5Ks. And I don't know, I just was getting a little bit bored, I guess, of what I was doing in that training. So I figured I just kind of wanted to run a marathon, to see what it was like. And so I ran it, and then I continued training for the rest of the time until I didn't make the Paralympics. And I remembered that I could run a marathon. And after I had failed to qualify for the Paralympics, I was pondering, just thinking of different things that I could do next. And I figured maybe another big challenge like my bike ride, except maybe a little shorter this time. And what have I done before? I've rode my bike across. I've never done a big running challenge, and so that kind of led to what could the running challenge be. And then I was aware of other people that had done the similar formats to 31 marathons in 31 days, 50 and 50 in 50 different states, or 50 Ironmans in 50 different states. So I just kind of took that format that other people had already pioneered and applied it to my own, put my own little spin on it, doing it in different cities. I figured that would get the biggest amount of, the largest number of eyeballs on it as possible, doing it in 31 of the most populous cities in the country. And doing it for a full month, because I figured that was a good length of time that will be long enough that I could get some momentum and then kind of carry that momentum for a while, but not so long that I'm out there for 50 days or whatever, and people are they kind of lose interest after a while, and then they forget, so people could follow along for a full month.
Yep. So what was the as you kind of kicked that off, what was that like? Did you train up to like a couple, weeks where you ran back-to-back marathons? Were you just kind of getting up to like a marathon distance a week, and then you're like, okay, I'm just going to go for it? Or what was your training like up to that point? And how did you get to the point where you're like, okay, I feel quote unquote ready for, a month of back-to-back marathons?
Yeah, you pretty much nailed it, man. I would do 6 weeks chunks of training, where I had one certain stress that I was applying, and then I would do a little test. So in 2016, I did a 6 weeks, and then I ran the Marine Corps Marathon again. And then I did another 6 weeks, and I actually attempted 2 marathons and screwed up the post-marathon fueling after day one, and I didn't actually complete the second one.
Okay.
And then, did another 6 weeks where I changed the training again. Basically, I'm just kind of getting longer runs and closer grouped runs during the training blocks. And then, then I bounced back from that 6 weeks later, did 3 marathons fine, finally nailed in that. These are all just tests, practicing, doing back to back, seeing what I need to eat, what I need, how I can pace, and how I can break up the distance. And then I did 5, I think I did 12 weeks, then I did 5. And then after I did 5, I kind of figured that was, if I kept going, I might as well just do the full 31 after that. So, I just kind of every 6 weeks, I would just, change the training, get longer, get closer grouped, until eventually in the last, probably 12 weeks, I was running a marathon every Thursday, followed by, a 2-hour run Wednesday, marathon Thursday, 2-hour run Friday, and then a 2-hour run Monday as well. So, just blocking that up, and, obviously it worked. So,
so the people that I've talked to that have run, like, I don't know, you're the only one that I've known that's done that many back-to-backs. I've talked to a couple people who've done I think they did maybe a week of marathons back-to-back. Mm-hmm. I've done a couple back-to-back on weeks, but I haven't done any back-to-back on the days, back-to-back days. But the ones I've talked to that have done it over a week say that after like the first 2 or 3 days are the hardest. Like the second day, I think it's like the third day is the hardest, but day 4, your brain kind of turns off and it says, okay, I guess this is what we're doing every day. I guess part of our daily routine is running a marathon every single day. And they said it got easier actually like day 4. What was your situation like with, running 31 of these in 31 days? Did you get used to it pretty quickly, or were you like, okay, day 1, day 2, oh no, this is going to get tough? And then was there a point where, was there a point where it got really tough and then a point where it got easier?
I was running at such a sub-maximal pace that it never got to a point where, any of one of the marathons was, maximum effort. But yeah, it kind of did follow that same pattern where the first maybe 4 or 5, or maybe 3 or 4, I got a little bit slower, and it was a little bit tougher. But then my body did start to adapt, and by the 10th one, I actually ran. That was my fastest one. Was my 10th one in Chicago, and then after that, I kind of just maintained that same speed. Somewhere between 3 hours and 50 minutes and 4 hours and 10 minutes of running time. And yeah, it's actually surprised me because I was expecting London to be my first one and my freshest one, and then after that, just kind of they would just get slower and slower and slower, and I would just kind of try and be holding off deterioration of my body. Even
Yeah.
I'm a person that's adapted to a lot of stuff, and so I know what the body's capable of. And I was surprised with this, so I was happily surprised. But then actually by the 31st one, the wheels were starting to fall off a little bit, and I was starting to get sore and sore. And I kind of just wonder whether or not that was because I decided to do 31 and I was getting close to the end. So maybe if I had decided to do 50, that 31st one wouldn't have been that bad, or whatever.
Yeah. The what were you mentioned, like, all you're getting sore, and this is one of the questions I think I asked you when we met in San Diego. But what specific areas begin to hurt the worst when you're running with the bionic knee? Because I imagine it's the similar muscles you're using, but you're using them probably in a slightly different way. And just what's that experience like?
The stuff that hurt the most for me was just the bottoms of my residual limbs. No matter how much preparation and how comfortable I get my leg sockets, there's always going to be a little bit of friction in there. And I would lubricate and I would do everything I could possibly do. But there's always going to be some friction. So there was some skin breakdown and there was some abscess going on. And so that would be painful. But, usually after the first mile or so, it would kind of get numb down there. And so I don't really only have to put up with it for the first mile. And then after that, my back would get a little bit sore. But that was about it. I felt pretty good, surprisingly.
I remember being surprised when you mentioned that to me, with just like how you would fit into the legs, because usually when you think of marathons, you're like, oh, I'm sore because my that sounds terrible, but I was gonna say my knees hurt or something like that. But for you, actually, the things that are enabling you are the things that are also sort of just uncomfortable. And I didn't even think about that until you mentioned it, as far as something that would be, anytime someone says bionic, you're like, oh, that's like helping you out a ton, but like it's actually uncomfortable, and has its own set of problems that you have to deal with.
Yeah, I think some people maybe don't realize that. I think most people probably realize that I'm putting a whole lot of pounding on the bottoms of my stumps. But
Yeah.
I did see some Instagram comments from some people saying that it was easy for me because my legs didn't hurt. So, and I didn't know if they were trying to be funny or if they were really that ignorant. But you just got to ignore that kind of thing.
I guess my question was, or the thing I didn't realize was that there would be that there would be pounding on the between your knee and the bionic limb. I guess I didn't realize that was like, it makes sense if you think about it, but like when you're just watching someone run, it looks pretty fluid, so it looks like it's like, oh, that's pretty comfortable. But yeah, not knowing that there is actually a little bit of actual pounding on, from the bionic knee to your leg.
Yeah, well, your body's got to take the impact.
Yeah, I know. That's why I was like, I don't know why I didn't think about that, but
and it's not all on the bottom. The sockets are set up so it's kind of distributed over the whole stump, but it's a lot on the bottom.
Yeah. So when you as far as like through this whole thing, you're in an RV and you're driving around. That was the other thing that I was impressed. You guys had like a to the minute, not to the minute, but like you guys had a pretty well scheduled out time frame as far as when you needed to leave to San Diego, when you needed to get into Arizona, what the timetable was for making sure you hit all these different spots. you had a team helping you out and coordinating all this, right?
Yeah, my wife Pam was running the show. Basically, all I did was run and do interviews and eat and sleep. So she was in charge. She was running the show and handling all that. My mom was there helping her and then giving me massages, and I had a driver. And yeah, we had the itinerary, and we had our planned travel times and what times we had to leave, and yeah, we planned all that out ahead of time so we could just kind of run it as we went. And for the most part, it worked out exactly according to plan.
Were there any points in the marathon that you thought, or in the month of marathons, that was particularly difficult for you?
The last 4 days were pretty tough because I injured my back in Nashville falling down on a bridge.
Oh,
And I had some kind of injury. It's fine now, but I don't know if I stretched something a little bit too far or tore something. I don't know, but yeah. So for the last 4 marathons, like every time I stepped on my right foot, it was pretty bad pain. But obviously it wasn't that bad of an injury because I still ran 4 more marathons afterwards. So yeah, it just hurt. So, but how much pain I felt was less important than my mission. So I just kept going with it.
yeah. Well, it's funny once you go through some of these extreme things that take a lot out of you, that your pain tolerance, like your understanding of understanding what you can do physically, but the understanding of what you can withstand too is is a whole lot more, especially when you have that underlying mission to fuel it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and so I just want to let you. I got about 5 more minutes that I can do.
Yeah. No, we can wrap this up,
but yeah, exactly. I totally agree with what you're saying there. It's like we're coming full circle here, exactly back to where we started. If your mission's important enough, you're willing to endure anything.
Cool. So what speaking of missions and your goals, what do you have anything on the docket here coming up? What's next for you?
I don't have really any big events like this planned. I'll probably be doing the One World Trade Center tower climb. I'll probably do the Tunnel to Towers 5K. So just a couple, smaller events like that. Other than that, I'm just going to keep spreading my mission. Keep fighting on behalf of veterans and spreading the word about what I've done and how that can be used for other people as inspiration or whatever. But yeah, that's my main mission right now, and I'll do some more pondering on whether or not that can be manifested in another physical endeavor.
Cool. Have you ever thought about doing any trail races or ultra races?
I can't really do trail races, to be honest with you.
Okay.
The trails are not set up for me. I have to have I have a very wide gait, so I wouldn't really be able to, I've tried and I wouldn't really be able to run on like that single track trail. I'd trip and, it wouldn't really work out very well. But, there's plenty of ultras that are on pavement, but yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure if it's something that interests me enough. You do have to have that little bit of interest as well,
Yeah, well, if you get interested, let me know. I'd be happy to talk you through some cool races out there. But yeah, I mean, there's a there's a lot of pavement right there for exactly. You. A lot of heat too. So if you don't do well there, that's going to be rough. So real quick, I want to get back to a couple things you're doing. You said you're raising $1 million for charities. You've raised a couple $100,000 already. Is that, I don't know the exact total that I found, but it's several $100,000. Yeah, it seems like.
Between my bike ride and this, we're at 330, probably 330,000.
That's great. So where can people, if they want to find out more about you, where can they find you on social media and your website?
Social media is at Rob Jones Journey for all the good stuff, and robjonesjourney.com is my website. And yeah, you can donate there, find out what I'm going to be doing next. Everything about me is going to be on there.
Awesome. One more question I like to ask everybody. A lot of times we talk about our stories in the past tense. Something was tough, we got over it, and we're on to the next thing. But a lot of times we don't talk about it in the moment. And in the moment, I was curious if there's anything out there right now or any challenges that you're looking at that either scare you or excitement is sort of the other side of fear. So either scare you or excite you as far as what's coming up next.
Well, I don't know what's coming up next, so I can't say anything's really scaring me at this point. But, if something doesn't scare you that you're about to do, then maybe you should reconsider whether or not it's difficult enough or pushing you far enough.
There we go. That's a good place to stop. So it's been great watching you run the month of marathons, and I look forward to seeing what you're up to next.
Thanks, man. I appreciate you giving me the opportunity.
Awesome, man. If you do get any new adventures, let me know, and we'll have you back on the pod, okay?
Roger that, man. Thanks.
All right, so that's today's podcast. I hope you guys got a lot out of Rob's story. He's an inspiring dude doing some incredible things, and I can't wait to see what he's up to next. If you guys would like to support the podcast, you can by going to iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, and leaving a review. It is the best way for us to reach more people and to have more people find out about us. I want to give a shout out here on a regular basis to different commenters who leave reviews. C. Winters, I think that's how you say it. It's got a bunch of numbers in the name. It says, always awesome information from Joel and his guests. Serves as a much needed wake-up call for people to push their limits every day. So if you want to be like C. Winters or any of the other people that are amazing and leave 5-star reviews, you can go head on over to iTunes, Google Play, or Stitcher. A couple other things. We're starting our cold shower therapy challenge on Monday. If you guys want more information, go ahead on over to impossiblehq.com, subscribe to the email list, and you'll get all the details there. I'm on day number 4 of cold showers today, and the challenge officially starts on Monday, but you get a head start getting used to the cold water. It's about 10 degrees over here on the East Coast in Boston, and is pretty chilly. So the water's not warm. That's the point. 30 days, cold showers, starts on Monday. If you want to know more, sign up at impossiblehq.com. Also, once you get out of the shower, you're going to need something to wear. So head on over to impossiblegear.com. Get the best hoodies, sweatshirts, whatever you're looking for. We probably got it. Wear your Impossible shirt. Next time you want to go do something, you think it's hard, you think it's going to be too difficult, put your shirt on, look at it in the mirror, and then go do the thing, okay? Then, once you go do it, send me a photo. I'll feature you on the site. I'll feature you on the podcast. Get it done. ImpossibleGear.com. Boom. If you want to keep up with Impossible on the day-to-day, you can follow me on Twitter at Joel Runyon and on Instagram at Joel Runyon. You can also follow Impossible at ImpossibleHQ on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. No spaces, no underlines, HQ as in headquarters. All right, guys, so that's it for the show. Cold Shower Therapy Challenge starts on Monday. Cold showers every day in the winter because that's the way we roll. We're back on our regular schedule, so I will see you guys right here next Thursday at 8 a.m. But until then, keep pushing your limits and do something impossible.